Hello, everybody. Welcome to MHTV. It's lovely to have you with us today. We have a fantastic guest with us. Today we have Leanne with us, who is a third-year student mental health nurse, and we're really delighted that she's taken time out of her busy schedule, which we'll be hearing about in a minute, to join us. Before we get started, let me hand you over to Dave to tell you how you can join in and how you can comment, because obviously we want to hear from you, we want to have any questions that you have to ask. Dave?
Hi, thanks, Nicky, and it's great to join in tonight again. So you've got a couple of options for joining in. The first is on Facebook Live. All you need to do is head to the side of the screen and make any comments or add any questions that you want to. And I'll be having a look in there and bringing any in that we can do. The other option that you've got is on Twitter, and all you need to do is use the hashtag MHTV. Just to say that at a certain point in the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, we're expecting Vanessa to drop into the conversation. She's busily now driving up a motorway somewhere in England. We're not too sure where, but she did stop at one service station, but had to sort of move on. I think she was moved on. So, maybe she'll want to describe why that's the situation herself. But without further ado, straight back to you, Nicky.
Okay, so Leanne, please, can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Leanne. I am a third-year mental health nursing student at Coventry University. It's been a journey.
Yeah.
So I suppose how do you want me to talk about how I came into nursing, I guess?
Sure, that'd be a good place to start.
So I was originally a solicitor, so I qualified as a solicitor when I sort of finished school, went through into my university, did my postgrad and qualified as a solicitor, and worked for 7 years as a private client solicitor, specialising in wills, probate, powers of attorney and things. And then when I had my eldest son, so about 6.5 years ago now, had postnatal depression. And I suppose for me, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I didn't really understand mental health services. Well, I didn't really know anything about them or really think about them or what they were, because it was never something that had touched my life in any way, or anyone I knew, I suppose. And so I had completely no knowledge about them. Obviously, was referred into services and had support. And then I think when I recovered, sort of thought, like, wow, like what happened to me? And sort of there's the fact that there's this whole world I didn't know about. And I thought, actually, that sort of real stigma around, particularly for parents, when you have a baby, it's meant to be sort of this really happy time, and then that sort of compounds, I think, where the mental health stigma that is already there and is such a massive sort of part of it, I suppose. And so for me, I just thought I wanted to do more. So I did some bits sort of voluntary, set up sort of a charity locally and a group for parents, and then just thought, I suppose, that wasn't enough, and I wanted to do something else, but I didn't really know what. And then I had my daughter, and was much more poorly after having her, really unwell, and had a lot of support from sort of a mental health nurse in the community that supported me at home. And she was just so incredible that after, once I'd been discharged and recovered, I just thought, that's what I want to do. Sort of that real holistic support where I can, because she just helped me with every aspect, I suppose. There was no sort of, oh, this is what we like. I saw other professionals, loads of other professionals, but there'd be things like, oh, you'd have this 6-week course in this, and this would help with this, but it's very sort of structured. You only have 6 sessions and then you're done, and all of this. Whereas she just gave me what I needed, I suppose, and that real sort of just me as a person. And I thought, that's what I want to do for parents. So I literally, on a whim, just quit my job. Well, I didn't just quit my job straight away. I spoke to the local university to find out what I'd need to do to get on the course, applied, it was a late application actually when it went in, had an interview and got accepted onto the course, and then handed in my notice, and sort of that was it. I've never really looked back.
It's a very quick progression, isn't it, that when you tell it that way? So if we go back to, just because you had 2 experiences of being unwell, they sound like they were very different to each other. When did you first realize this isn't what happens to a lot of people who have babies? Something strange is happening to me.
Yeah, I think it's hard because you don't really know. I know for me, I didn't really understand it myself, and I think that was part of the reason why I didn't reach out for support, because I think if you've never had mental illness before, it's not something people really talk about, particularly when you're pregnant. I think people don't want to scare you. So it wasn't really talked about much. There's no education as such, and then you suddenly find yourself unwell, and trying to navigate these services, but people are asking you how you're feeling, and you sort of thinking, I don't really know how I feel. I don't feel right, but I don't know whether I'm meant to feel this way. Like, is this how someone feels when they're depressed, or is it just because I'm tired and I haven't slept and you know, life's just completely changed and I don't know whether I'm coming or going. And so you don't really know, I suppose, for quite a while. Then they tried to put in a referral. And for me, there was a lot around the language of mental health services. It's such an unknown to people. Yet I think, and I suppose we do it quite a lot, I suppose, don't we? In that you talk to people like they get it, like it's the world we're in. Like even now, sort of when I'm on wards and stuff, you forget that actually to people they don't understand these things. And I remember someone calling me when they put my referral through and saying, "Oh, because you're not sleeping, we're going to refer you to a psychiatrist." And in my head, the midwife had sort of geared me up for being referred to just for some psychology support at the hospital. And that felt sort of manageable. And then suddenly they started talking about psychiatrists, and I was like, whoa, that seems like another level. Like psychiatrist seems like such a scary term. Like that's like, I was like, they really think I'm mad or something. Like I can't do this. And that was how I saw it in my head, and it was completely ridiculous, based on nothing, I suppose, but sort of naive perceptions from sort of films. I don't know, wherever else you pick it up from, because you've got no idea. And there's no real education on what the different people are in a mental health team, or how it works, or what the setup is. So I sort of just refused, I suppose, pushed all the support away then, and refused to see anyone. And it was the same with I wouldn't see the CPN because I heard the term community psychiatric nurse, and that, again, that word psychiatric just completely freaked me out, and I didn't want to know. And in the end, I only agreed for the GP to sort my medication, through the perinatal team liaising with the GP, but the GP ended up getting it all wrong and making me really unwell and sending me into crisis because she was weaning different medications and getting them all confused, and took me off medication very quickly. And actually I ended up so unwell then that I'd been better off just going to the psychiatrist in the first place and letting her sort it all. And I think for me that was sort of the big change for me second time around, because then when I was aware second time around, I'd been through these services, so I understood them. I understood what everything meant, and I sort of took the psychiatry support, the CPN and the psychologist, and I had them all there because it didn't feel as scary. It wasn't an unknown, and I understood what the role was and felt able to accept that support, I suppose.
Were you scared when you got pregnant the second time?
Yes, very. It took a long time, hence I've got such a big gap between my two children. It took a long time, I suppose, to feel ready to have another one. A long time. And I think even when I did, I'd never been an anxious person, and even when I was unwell the first time, I never really suffered anxiety, always very laid back. And with my son's pregnancy, I'd been quite, anything goes, and quite really enjoyed it. With my daughters, it was much less so. I think I was very aware that things could go wrong, and there was a likelihood that things could go wrong, and I had been warned of that. And I think certain things helped. So when I was discharged, obviously, from the perinatal team, there was a plan in place as to what would happen if I got pregnant again. I went back into the service, what would need to happen. And I suppose I was quite lucky that because I'd already been unwell, second time around, support was in place very quickly. And sort of as soon as I'd had my booking appointment with the midwife, I had support there, and there was sort of, they were there with me, I suppose, seeing me. We've got a guest.
Hello.
And I was quite lucky, I suppose, that I had support quite quickly, and quite soon after my booking appointment, the midwife I had that support in place. So I had people alongside me in pregnancy, which made a big difference. But it was definitely very nerve-wracking. Sort of that fear of it's not a fear of the unknown, but it's fear of the known, because you know what could happen, but equally you don't know if it's going to happen again or what it's going to be like. But
it's a lot of uncertainty.
But I think I did also know that I'd been there before, I'd got through it before, and I knew what to do, I suppose. So that helped to a certain extent.
I think what I find really kind of impressive about not just your recovery and things like that, but the fact so I set up a charity, and so how did that come to happen? Because that's not what most people normally do. So the people with cancer illness, they see a gap in services, and they say, oh, here's a gap in services. They don't go, right, what we need is a charity here. So tell us about that.
So I guess for me, I suppose it was such a whirlwind, because I was so, I don't know, if you spoke to people that looked after me, I was probably horrendous, because they you have this sort of, I suppose, like, because I pushed it away all the time, I wouldn't work with them, and I was so stubborn. And I knew it wasn't in my interest to do so, but I just didn't know what else to expect. And I think no one has the conversations around how difficult it is to have a baby and sort of that risk of mental illness in pregnancy and sort of postnatally. And no one really, so you're there. And I remember not telling any of my friends because I was too scared to tell them. You worry that people are going to judge you and think less of you or think of you differently, because people love having a baby, and people will come and see you and they'll say, oh, isn't it so amazing, and you just want to cuddle them all the time, don't you? And you sit, like, when you're not feeling that way, it makes you feel even more isolated, so you sort of struggle along with that a little bit, and then you sort of, I don't know, you sort of don't want to talk to anyone. And it was only sort of maybe a year later when I did actually say to my friends, to my friends that I'd been unwell, it turned out that somebody in my immediate group of mum friends that all had babies at the same time was also under the perinatal team, but neither of us knew the other was, because neither of us wanted to say that we were. And it's only afterwards you think, that's so ridiculous. I don't know, play something else, shush. He's like, how do you play this game? I'm like, I don't know.
You just welcome Vanessa, I think. Hello, Vanessa.
Yeah.
You're lurking in the darkness. It's all well.
I am. I'm at Woolly Edge Services, so I've managed to find a safe spot to pull over on my way to join you all. So
You're
hi,
like a
Leanne.
roving reporter.
Hi. I know. I'm on my phone, so but the wonders of technology. Yeah.
We were just talking about how Leanne got from being sort of poorly to actually then set up a charity, and then sort of deciding to come into mental health nurses. Do you have any questions, Vanessa? Because you obviously know each other.
Yeah, not so far. I was just listening to Leanne's story. I just think it's really important, to hear people's stories, isn't it? Particularly those of us who work in mental health, because sometimes, as part of the kind of othering culture, there's an assumption that we're all well and we've got it sorted. And I think sometimes, like, we perpetuate that myth ourselves, don't we, amongst each other. So I think it's just, I was just really keen. I thought it'd be really good to have Leanne on just to share her experience. And for people listening, maybe who are considering, being a nursing student, I thought it'd be quite an inspiring, encouraging story to hear as well. So, yeah.
Inspiring and encouraging, Leanne. She's talking about you.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
But something really so you was talking about that kind of experience of sort of isolation and loneliness after having a baby. If you go off script, it's almost like nobody knows what to do or say. As long as you get that routine of everything is fine, then everybody knows kind of how to behave. But as soon as you deviate or have a situation that they maybe aren't as familiar with, if all that kind of support withdraws, everyone sort of draws in a little bit, with quite anxious.
Yes, I mean, we started when we first did. So originally, when we started it, started running a group, and it was a local community centre that I'd managed to persuade them to let me have a room in the community centre 1 day a week, and we sort of set up. And the psychologist who had looked after me actually was really keen, and she felt there was a real gap there for sort of that peer support, meeting other parents that had been through it. That could almost, so you had someone else to talk to and to encourage people to speak up, because I think like people now come to me and say, oh, I knew, like, if I've got friends that are struggling, I say, oh, I knew I could talk to you. And it's like, you don't just, it's not just that you can talk to me because I've been there. You should be able to talk to everyone. It shouldn't matter that you can only talk to people that have been through it. You should be able to talk to anyone and have that conversation. So I suppose that's the idea of it. And I mean, it's grown hugely now. So we're currently we're still in the one venue in Warwickshire. It's been somewhat held back by my studies, I suppose. But we're looking to try and expand into sort of 4 others around the area. I have 5 healthcare professionals that have come on board now as trustees. So it's sort of really grown, and we do things like wellbeing packs that go out to parents. So for parents or struggling, we have sort of local charities, health visitors, midwives, and people that will, the perinatal team that will sort of contact us, and we'll send out wellbeing packs to parents. We run one-to-one support, and we have sort of training and supervision packages for our volunteers, so we train them up. So it's really come on great over the last few years, which is really good, because it's definitely needed.
What's the name of the charity?
By Your Side, it's called.
By Your Side. See Dave leaping to action there. It's beautiful. It's a tweet away.
So, Leanne, is it a local charity for people who live in the area, or is it something that people can access outside of the region as well?
So it's a bit
Is it mainly face to face?
Yeah, so peer support wise, it's parents in Coventry and Warwickshire we support. But we do sort of have times where we'll run things like on a more national basis, sort of this. We did a journal workshop once online, which we ran sort of open to everybody. And we do produce resources. So we produced a resource recently on helping people reach out for support and how they might do that. I think sort of triggered by the pandemic a little bit, and the fact that sort of support went very much virtual and not face to face. And we realised quite quickly that actually that means that a lot of onus is on people to have to reach out for mental health support, because there's no one there on the front line seeing these people anymore. So once upon a time you might have gone to your health visitor clinic or seen your midwife, and they might have thought, oh, something's a bit amiss, or you might have said, oh, I don't know, I'm not sleeping well, you know, or something, and dropped it in and hoped they'd picked up on it and asked you. And there was just less of that happening. And parents, the onus is very much on parents, have to literally pick up a phone, speak to a GP and say, oh, I think I'm struggling with my mental health, or, you know, have to say that and not really know what to say or how to have those conversations. So we produced a resource which we worked on with local parents, sort of looking at actually how that could be helpful. And that was sort of the idea for that, was because when I was unwell second time around, I hated calling the crisis team, because it was just, I don't know, I always hated the idea of it, because I thought, even if I need to do it, like, I don't really know what to say. Like, what do you do? When you call it someone there on the other line, how do you actually start that conversation? And it just felt so difficult for me to do. I would never ever have be able to call them. And my nurse actually sat down with me at one point and said, right, we're going to do you a little script, she said, and then what you do is, if you're really struggling, you call up and you just say this line, and then they will take over and do the rest, but at least you've made the call and you know what you've got to do. And that did just help that first step that little bit easier. And they do, obviously, because once you've said that, you just say what's on the script and they do pick it up and they will lead the conversation and ask what they need to ask, and it's fine then. So it's sort of, I think that was what it was sort of inspired by. But we do a lot of things like that, which I know nationally are quite well used. And we're in the process of trying to get it translated into we've got it translated into about 3 or 4 languages, but trying to get it into more, so that sort of parents can benefit from it, particularly locally, but obviously nationally as well. We're quite a diverse county in Coventry and Warwickshire, so it's definitely sort of helpful to other parents then as well that might need to access support in some way.
Yeah.
So your next sort of step was to sort of, when you'd had care from meeting a mental health nurse, which is such a nice thing to hear, isn't it? Who was able to give you the kind of care that you actually needed. And I think what I think is particularly exciting about that is sometimes we struggle in mental health to say what it is we do, but what it is we do is what the person needs. And it sounds like that's what happened for you.
Yeah. Definitely. And that was very much what made the nurse. I remember speaking to the lecturer, whoever the person was who was dealing with admissions at the time at the university, when I rang up, and I said, that's why I want to do nursing, because I don't want to be a psychologist who maybe does 6 sessions with a parent on a certain specific thing and then says, actually, our sessions are over now and I know that you're not better and you're not fixed, but I'm done with my bit, and move on. I liked the idea that actually just take a parent through a journey and holistically whatever they need help with, and sort of help them be able to take control of their own recovery, I suppose. And that was what I really liked about the nursing thing. And I thought nothing else, no other career in mental health would give me that, like the nursing career would. So that was, I suppose, what attracted me to it and what made me think, no, that's what I wanted to do.
Good to hear. So you did you're getting, you told us how you actually got onto the course. So you're almost heading towards the end of your course now.
Yeah, it's flown by.
Months left. Dare we ask how it was? Was it how you thought it would be, your training?
It's hard, really hard. Like, people warned me it'd be hard, and they said, "Oh, make sure you think about it. It's very hard. You know, it's a lot of work." And so I was sort of prepared for it to a certain extent, but it's hard. It's a lot of work. Like, it's at times it is like having a full-time job. It's full on. It's a juggle. But I have really enjoyed it. Like, I think I'll actually miss studying in a way.
Don't let your
learning
university hear that. You've been a master's before you know where you are.
things. No, that's not my
Yeah.
husband will divorce me if I do anymore. He's told me once I finish, we'll get a job.
Have you got any
No,
advice for people that are just starting off on that career as a student nurse?
yeah. So I'd say I don't know, just enjoy it, I guess. Like, it has been great. I'd definitely say as well, lean on your cohort. Like, our cohort now, when we first started, it was COVID and we didn't know each other that well. But now we are such a close-knit group of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's strange. And it almost, even now, like going out on placement at the end of the month, it feels strange because you think like, oh, I'm going to miss them all. Because it's really nice. Like, we really help each other a lot. And we're such a mix, and we're so diverse in like what experience we bring, what we've done before, and there's some sort of that have just finished school and come straight into it, and they're great for helping us with like the IT and all the other things that we don't have a clue on. None of it was around first time. And when I did my last degree, like we were given a printed sheet at the front of the class and then went to sit down and listen to the lecturer speak. And I still now, they all turn up with some of the young ones turn up with their laptops, and I still walk in with my ring binder and my notebook to make my notes.
Courses for courses.
And I just think but it's nice because we've all been able to help each other, and it's sort of that benefit of experience, isn't it? We can give the younger ones, and life experience and time management, and then there's loads they can give to us in the way of technology and how things work, and sort of how we can, do that side of university, I suppose. It's been really nice, and it's really nice we've got that sort of closeness and we can support each other like that. And I think that our lectures are always, and it is so true, like it is not a competition. At the end of the day, we all want to be nurses, and like we all just want to be there on graduation day, graduating, and and I think helping each other and doing all that is so important. Like, it doesn't matter who comes out with what grade, does it? As long as you all, if you can support, and we often do it, we'll sit and meet up and practice things and talk through things. And if people don't know, if one of us is stuck with an essay, we'll all sit down and, talk through it together and come up with ideas, and, what sort of layout are they thinking and what point should we cover? And I think that is important because it is hard. It's not easy. You don't want to be going into it alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So have you obviously you've got a specific interest around perinatal mental health, but have you found through your experience and your training that there've been other areas that you've been particularly drawn to?
So I was just saying to Nicky actually before we started that my last placement was on the PQ ward, and I really loved it, and I was really surprised by how much I loved it. And until I got my job role I got the other week, that was where I was sort of thinking I might go. Sort of when I qualified, I'd quite happily like have gone to the ward and worked there and been genuinely really happy in my job. And it's funny because when I started I was like, no, I wouldn't like anything else. But in some ways I've loved every placement I've done for different reasons. But I always think I will do, like I had a placement with our dementia team, and again at the time I thought, oh, I don't think this is really for me, but absolutely loved it. And at the end of it, the only thing that when they said after, would you come into it as a career, the only thing I think that really put me off was the fact that at the time they weren't seeing patients long term. It was very much discharge back to GP, and I missed the idea of long term, like, or that supporting a patient through it. So it didn't, but I loved the actual work. I loved going out and seeing the patients and working with them. And I've genuinely learned so much from each placement. So even if it's a placement where I've gone and I've thought this isn't what I want to do, I've learned so much from the patients, from the staff, that I don't know, I've never not liked a placement, and maybe I'm lucky, I don't know. But I've never not liked a placement. I've always enjoyed them, and it's always about sad when you leave on your last day and you say goodbye to people and you feel like you're leaving a job. It's strange.
And when do you qualify? I was just wondering when.
Summer. So not too long now. We're just we're doing dissertations. We've got our last 2 placements coming up pretty much back to back, and then we're done really. We've got this dreaded medication exam that everyone talks about that you have to get 100% in. Coming up.
You will not be alone in that horror. Everyone has that.
No.
I know, I hear everyone talk about how awful it is. And our lecturer saying the other day, he's like, it's not that bad. Like, you know it all. And I'm like, we know. It's just the idea of it.
Yeah.
To it, isn't it? Oh. Go
I
on,
was seeing
Nicky,
that you
sorry.
got involved in some other things as well in the course of your training. And I was really interested to hear if you could tell us a little bit more about that. I know you did some work with the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Despite having a horror of psychiatrists, you got involved with them. Tell us how that happened.
I did. So I am. I sit on the exec committee for the Royal College of Psychiatry's perinatal faculty.
Brilliant.
Which is really interesting. And I love getting involved in that work. So the sort of various projects I've done with them, sort of looking at how I suppose perinatal mental health teams across the country are working with families, sort of looking at the care they provide and making sure that is, I suppose, from a lived experience perspective, if that is what parents want and how that can be sort of changed. So I contributed to the perinatal CR232. I always forget it because it's just a load of numbers, which is sort of the recommendations from the Royal College of Psychiatry on provision of mental health care for childbearing women. So that's sort of the document, I suppose, that all perinatal mental health teams base themselves on and work from. So I helped, I contributed towards that. As I said, I sit on their exec committee to work on various things, and I've done sort of smaller projects with them as well, looking at specific aspects of care. And I also did some work with the NSPCC recently. So they were looking at postnatal care for parents, so how they are supported with their mental health when they've had a baby. And spoke in House of Parliament on that, did the closing speech on that, and sort of their talk to MPs about the importance of ensuring that care is funded and that there is adequate provision in place, and sort of the vulnerabilities around that time and how important that is for parents and babies. So that was very good. Got to go to Downing Street, met Larry the cat, which is very nice. Got some lovely pictures of my daughter stroking Larry the cat, which was very nice.
Which PM did you catch? Because we've had a few. Do you remember? Boris. I love the way you remember the cat a lot more clearly.
I do remember the cat a lot more than the PM. It was Boris. Not long before Boris left, though. That's what I was thinking. I was like, no, it was still Boris.
So how did that come about? How did you come to be sort of speaking and sort of influeing like that?
So I suppose it sort of happened quite gradually, I suppose, over sort of the last few years. I started off locally doing some work with sort of local midwives, speaking to midwives and health visitors locally about sort of care I had and sort of how they can support parents and what they can be doing. And I suppose those little things that they probably don't think about that are really important, and sort of did a lot around that locally. And then ended up speaking a couple of times at the West Midlands perinatal meetings. And then people just, I don't know, get to hear of you, don't they? Twitter's great for that sort of networking thing. So I got involved with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance and started doing some work with them. And then from there, I suppose I've just got to know contacts. I've done a lot of work with the Institute of Health Visiting. So I help train their perinatal mental health champions. That's something I feel quite strongly about because I had fabulous health visiting support from my health visitor. Yeah, and I think because the funding's been cut so much, parents just aren't getting that anymore. And it's a real shame because that's almost their first port of call. That's often who parents speak to when they're first struggling and that sort of when they want to first reach out. And I think not having that service there makes it much harder.
I agree.
And just like, I don't know, that extra nurse support. So like I spoke to a parent the other day who was struggling and like it's so interlinked. Like when you have a baby, like it doesn't take much to unsettle your mental health through other things that are going on for you. And her baby was struggling with feeding and she needed support and she didn't know what to do. And it was, and she sort of called her health visitor to speak to them. They're like, oh, you need to see a health visitor, but the first one isn't until sort of the 8th of February or something it was. And this was like 2 weeks ago. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, how do I wait that long? Do I go to the GP? And it's just like parents are so isolated. So it's something I feel very passionate about. So I've done a lot of work with them. And then through them, I've just got to know other people, I suppose. So the NSPCC heard of me through the Institute of Health Visiting and got me on board to help with their campaign. And just, yeah, I don't know, people just contact me.
Sounds like maybe you take the step of saying yes a lot. So I think once you start saying yes, it's a lot easier to move forward, isn't it? So
Yeah.
how do you prepare then? Because I mean, that's something maybe that a lot of students don't have that experience. They don't have the experience of anybody listening to them, let alone people asking them things. So how do you prepare to take your personal experience or your student experience into a place that's actually helpful for people?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I learned something. I think every time I go out and talk to a group of people or speak at a conference, I learn something new, or I think of something I'm going to do differently each time I do it. So I definitely think some of it is just experience. But actually sometimes it's just getting out there and doing it. Like, I know like a lot of people are like really afraid of doing it, and I think I was, and even now if I'm going out to speak to people, I'm so nervous just beforehand. And I speak to people that I see at conferences that are so scared as well, and they're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, just nervous, but you just do it, don't you? Even though sort of inside you think you're going to have a heart attack in a minute, you do it. And actually I always say to them, I think if I didn't, then I wouldn't care, so I wouldn't be passionate, and I wouldn't be giving as passionate a talk. So I think it's in some ways it's good that you care. And I've said that to sort of students before when we've gone in to do our OSCEs, or we've done presentations or our Vivas and things at uni. I say to them, like, it's good that you're nervous, because that does show you care, and it shows you want to do well, and it shows you care about what you're saying to them and how you're going to come across, and that's important. That's what you want. And I think it's seeing that fear, isn't it, as not something that's something to be scared of. But I say that now 2 years down the line, sort of when I first, like before I started talking, I used to be so nervous, which is ridiculous because as a solicitor going to court and things, but I hated it. I hated court. I hated getting up speaking to people. I hated dealing with judges, sort of all of that. And I think going out there and making myself do it those first couple of times, because I was so passionate about it, I just wanted to make sure it changed, and it was more of mental health was more of a conversation for parents. That I think I forced myself out there to do it, and once you force yourself, it just feels easier then as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's helped my confidence generally overall as well. I feel like now, I think if I hadn't have done that and then I'd gone to uni, sort of, I look at some of the people that do that, some of the like younger students maybe that do their Vivas and things, and they've sort of not got that experience of public speaking and that. And I think, I don't know how you're doing it. They're so brave, because I would never have like been able to do that when I was sort of early to mid 20s. Sort of, it's only having all that experience that's made me confident enough to do things like that, I suppose.
Yeah. I may have missed this, but have you secured yourself a post when you finish the course?
I have, yeah.
You have?
Yeah, so I'm going to work at a local mother and baby unit in Birmingham.
Brilliant, well done. That's great.
That was I found out I got that job the day before Christmas Eve. That was a nice little Christmas present.
Isn't? Yeah, so you won't have worked there on placement?
No,
you don't know that.
I haven't worked there at all. There's a real shortage of placements, so I can't get into there because it's not my local hospital to do a placement. But I will be going for my management placement, sort of our very last one. So I will get to go there and see it before I qualify, and sort of do time as a student there, which would be really helpful actually.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, congratulations.
At the end of the month I'm going out to do CAMS placement, so that'll be interesting.
It will be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you also were involved in Twitter as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I am involved. I don't know what the term would be.
I don't know how you studied, by the way, how you fitted every study in. Okay.
And everything else.
There's a good team of us. So it's the We Student Nurse account for the We Communities. It's on a little bit of a break at the moment, I suppose, but there's sort of 6-7 students that curate that, and that's been really nice, because actually I've made sort of the students that I've sort of admined with along the way. So I suppose I was at the end of my first year when I got involved with that, and did it all through second year. And I think what's great about that is it's nice to have a community of student nurses. And it's nice to have a community of student nurses from other disciplines as well, because you don't get a lot of that at university really. So we do, because as well of COVID and bigger lectures with all the nurses across all fields. You sort of are more virtual just because the numbers obviously around, and sort of that's just COVID timing. So it's been really nice because I've got to meet and work with sort of learning disability nurses, adult nurses, children's nurses, and you learn so much from each other, don't you? We were doing a project the other week, and I was talking to a children's nurse, and it was just so interesting because like we both like talking, especially because I was sort of interlinked to me because I was talking about the mother and baby unit, and they were talking about sort of their time on children's boards, and like she said, like, I've never spoken to a mental health nurse. She's like, it's so interesting to hear this perspective. Like there was so much I didn't know. And it's the same vice versa, I suppose. And sort of the learning disability nurses, again, like we've had very limited training on sort of learning disabilities and supporting patients with learning disabilities. So it's like really interesting to talk to them and hear what their placements are like and sort of the sort of things they're doing. And I think my exposure to nurses in other fields would have been very limited had I not been involved with sort of the wee communities and wee student nurses. So it has been really interesting, and I've sort of made some really good nurse friends there that I'll definitely sort of stay in touch with, and sort of as we all qualify off across the country into various things.
Yeah, that's good.
You're really at a turning point, aren't you?
Yeah, it feels very strange. It does. It feels like sort of the end's really in sight now. There's not long.
Yeah, it is. It's just around the corner.
Dave has a question for you. So, health visitor in the house, everybody.
There is, but it's
Brace
not on
yourself.
health visitor, Nicky, so I'm going to book the trend. Leanne, one of the things that I've been thinking is you just mentioned the last bit about the kind of the transfer of knowledge between different fields of practice in nursing, is that there's a bank of mental health nurses that are quite anxious about the NMC standards and how much they relate to mental health nursing. And I suppose as a near to be newly qualified nurse, what's your experience been? Do you think that the balance is right? Do you feel like you've had enough of the kind of knowledge sort of transferred from the other fields of nursing? Or has it been too much and that's impacted how much you've had in terms of mental health education, or is it just not enough?
I think it's definitely improved as our course has gone on. So second and third year we had a lot more. So we've had sort of specific learning disability lectures and modules where we've done various bits on learning disabilities. So that's been quite helpful. And more of that probably in some ways be quite welcome, because I think they do interlink with mental health so closely. That it'd be nice to sort of really feel more confident if you were sort of working with those patients. I think the thing that I know sort of our cohort, like a lot, like talking to sort of student nurse at the moment, that comes up a lot is the clinical skills are so heavily adult based. It's really hard. Mental health nurses really often find them quite hard to get signed off for the NMC sort of clinical skills sign off when we're on placement, because sometimes it's so hard. Like, not all of them. I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of an example that comes to my head, but they are like, when you look at sort of, they're very heavily adult nurse based, a lot of them, sort of students, we feel. And when we're having to meet all the criteria, we often have to go off to sort of general wards and things to tick the box. Feels like box ticking exercise, and because they don't come as naturally, we all say, like, sometimes you're on placement and you can't just focus on just enjoying the placement and what you're doing, because you're conscious you've got to tick all these boxes, which are all linked to adult mental health, and you'll probably never do ever again. Like, I'm trying to, like, some of them are like how to do like an IV fluid bag, and you think like, we have to do that, we have to tick that box, we have to go out and do spoke visits on placements to tick these boxes to do them so we can sign them off. But it's like, once we qualify, the chances of us doing that are so slim. There's just sort of, it just feels like it's a little bit, sometimes it can be a little bit one box tick all, and it's all very geared around the adult nursing, and there's not as much sort of around that. And I mean, I suppose our university were really good in that they sort of helped us decipher that. So they did do us a little sheet on how actually we can link them in specifically with our mental health placements, which was really helpful, because we had that last placement and we could look at it and think, well, actually, this is what we could do. And we could talk to our sort of wards about it, that we could, I suppose, use it in a slightly more mental health way. Because before that, it's, and I know sort of other students in other universities will say to me that if they don't have that, they're sort of racking their brains, like I said, trying to just sort of tick these boxes. whereas it'd be quite good, I suppose, to have it more geared up, I suppose, for mental health nurses, to have it geared up more around a mental health background, and like, what is it that, you know, what are the key skills and clinical skills that we need to be knowing as mental health nurses that are relevant to our practice.
Yeah, definitely. I can see we're hitting the 40-minute mark again. Very, very fast as usual. So thank you, Leanne, for whizzing that along. It's really interesting. Perhaps we could come to everybody for one last comment and then maybe finish with Leanne. I actually can't see the other two of you now. I can only just see Darcy. Like you're in witness protection, but I assume you're still there.
My car's switched off, so I've just been trying to turn the light on, so apologies, it won't let me without starting the engine. And it's also freezing here. But anyway, it's nice to join you, Leanne, even though I was late. And I know you're back with us as well in a few weeks, aren't you? We're doing a session on digital mental health and young people. So we'll look forward to you joining us again. But I think it's just been really nice to hear your story and your, you know, openness and honesty, and, you know, the work you're doing is really inspiring. So look forward to seeing how it develops as well.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for being on with us tonight.
Absolutely. Dave, did you want to add anything?
Well, obviously, it's been a pleasure to hear health visitors mentioned lots and lots, because it is the best profession in the world. So thanks for that, Leanne. And I suppose just to also say, next week, we're talking about the Mental Health Nurses Handbook. So I think that'll probably go in quite nicely in terms of the, you know, the kind of advice and suggestions Leanne's provided tonight. And probably segues quite nicely into Dr. Sue McLaughlin and Dr. Emma Wadey, that are going to be talking about that new book that came out late last year.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely. So Leanne, is there anything you wanted to say before we head out?
I don't know. I suppose for me, yeah, just enjoy it, to student nurses out there and to anyone. I mean, I am forever approached or hear people say that they're thinking about doing nursing as a student, like doing it, and they don't know whether to, and all, you know, it's hard to decide, and am I too late? And I was speaking to someone this morning that said, oh, they didn't know I was doing it, and they said, oh, I'd love to do it, and I don't know, it's a big career change for me, and I need to look, you know, there's so much to consider. And I would say, don't just go for it. Like, it's been great, and I loved my career beforehand, but like, I love this so much more, and there's much more passion there, and you can do so much with you know, mental health nursing. The world's your oyster. Once you've qualified, you can do so much with it.
I can't think of a better way to finish than that. So thank you very much, Leanne. Thank you very much to you guys for watching, and we'll just wish you good night. Good night, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.